Hi there, this is Dr. Coates, and this is the third and final walkthrough video for the synthesis matrix assignment for Unit 2, UNIV 200, with me, Jason Coates. So the reflective walkthrough should still be an informal piece of writing, and it should indeed be a reflection on Sheet 2. So please don't do this until you've completed Sheet 2 of the matrix, and of course don't do Sheet 2 until you're done with Sheet 1. So it is a sequential assignment. I'm expecting this to be the last thing that you do. So here I've got Sheet 2 of the sample matrix for just the core readings open. Here is the overall research question: how has social media evolved or matured the way it has over the last decade or so? And I just want to show you what the reflective writing for one of the rows of this matrix might look like. And I'm giving you an example of how to do this in a way that would make it easiest to take your reflection and sort of paste it into your draft of the Unit 3 research paper, and have it be closest to where you'd want it to be, so that they're bona fide, body paragraphs for that paper. So my theory here is that if you do a little bit more work right now, then that can prevent you having to do more work later. So let's take this last row. Since everything is disrupted, responsibility is nebulous, what's the best way to make positive change via social media? And you'll see that I've got 5 boxes filled in, and I'm not necessarily going to go from left to right when I'm writing this up, because that's arbitrary. It's just the way that the matrix was set up. So one of the first things I need to do is to decide what order I would want to talk about my sources in, and then in the walkthrough I want to provide a non-random reason why I've given them in this order. Okay. And then ideally you could build like a little mini narrative, or demonstrate what it is that you're able to accomplish by having your sources mentioned at all. In this case, to address the prompt on the far left, the one I just read you. Okay, so let me take you to another document. This is under the Unit 2 folder as well, and this is called Sample Bullet for Reflective Walkthrough, Core Readings Only. And here's that overall research question again. And then here is the prompt on the far left for this row. And so here I've got the boxes that are filled in listed, and then I put them in order that made sense to me, but wouldn't necessarily make sense to your instructor, if he, and again that's me, but sorry, this is what made sense to the individual writer. And then if you just gave like the bare bones listing of the sources, they're in order, so that's great, but you need to explain yourself a little bit. So I'm going Shirky, Gladwell, Hampton. Oh, I'm sorry, no, this is out of order, isn't it? This is going left to right. Shirky, Gladwell, Hampton, Lakoff, Sommerfeld. If you look down here, the order I decided to put them in are Shirky, Lakoff, Gladwell, Hampton, Sommerfeld. It's not all that different, but I suppose like the main thing I want to stress is that I do have a reason for listing them in this order, and that reason is I wanted to start with obstacles to positive change via social media, and then move from those obstacles to remedies. So given what we know about how either the human brain works, or how people tend to behave on social media, what's the best way of working around these obstacles? Okay, now I'm starting here with a subclaim or some organizing statement. When I've had students try to do this in class activities, I find this is one of the most difficult things for them to come up with. So I would suggest writing this part that's in yellow last, and instead start off with the first source that you've decided to talk about, given your reason. But for now, ignore that sentence. We'll come back to it in a second. It's just we're going to start talking about obstacles first. So doing your APA signal phrase shoutouts, Shirky 2008 is the way that you refer to a source, in this case the Shirky source. So author and year, and then past tense verb. So Shirky 2008 mentioned the tragedy of the commons, the idea that individual selfishness makes the collective good less attractive than short-term personal gain, even if that gain is unsustainable over the longer term. The thing in the Shirky chapter was about shepherds letting their sheep graze over the entire pasture, rather than only giving them as much as they actually needed. It was difficult for them not to take advantage of the commons and fairness. Anyway, so that's one problem, or one way of thinking about the problem. Another way of thinking about it is Lakoff, 2016b, also noted the difficulty of the human mind to focus on systemic causes, since we innately prefer to attribute direct causes to complicated overcomplicated phenomenon. Yeah. So we prefer to find villains rather than to look at the entire system. Okay. So that's another reason why it's difficult for us to notice a problem online. And then a third way of thinking about this is Gladwell 2000 brought in the 80-20 principle. That relatively few people are actually responsible for the vast majority of actions and events. So perhaps the task is simpler if we focus on the smaller number of social media influencers rather than convincing everyone to be best. So in this case, the 80-20 principle, I'm bringing that in to demonstrate that most people are just going to wait around for the 20% of people to actually, suggest a solution or to notice that something is wrong. So let's say instead of just in the abstract, this is a problem like you notice someone is being cyberbullied online. You might think the tragedy of the commons might lead you to think, well, it's not happening to me, so therefore I don't need to worry about it so much. Lakoff might have you thinking, or the Lakoff way of thinking about this is, yeah, that's one troll, but at least everyone else is fine. The point here is to outlaw that troll, and then all will be well. Even though the online ecosystem might actually be motivating more trolls to get born every day, or to exhibit trollish behavior, or maybe it's something about the app or the way that everyone is acting rather than just a few bad actors. So when you get to Hampton here, I'm going to make a pivot. According to Hampton et al. 2014, the only way to break down spirals of silence is to concentrate taboo-defying speech in the right types of circles. Okay, so that's the other thing. If there's a spiral of silence, it's going to be more difficult to break through with positive messages. But on the other hand, that's also a recipe for how to break through, because you have to actually speak out against the spiral of silence, or else it'll never get broken. So it's hard to do, but given what we know about the 80-20 principle, maybe the idea here is to find those people that the 80% will listen to, give them a positive message, and then have them break through the spiral of silence. And that's the second part of the sentence. This can happen by focusing on the influencers whose speech is heard the loudest because they have the most followers. Another way of going about positive change is to use what Sommerfeld talks about. Alternatively, instead of focusing on the 20% of influencers, we might engineer a constructive viral campaign, what Sommerfeld 2013 called an image event.